All right. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a City Council special meeting for December 9th, 2024. And before we continue through the agenda, I just wanted to get a sense of council's will. We don't have a quorum at this point, and it doesn't look like we will tonight, but we do have the option of discussing the items and hearing presentations and on the several items on the agenda, but I wanted to see what the sense of council is on this. All right, Member Bryan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I especially on the comprehensive plan would like to delay even an overview of that information. I feel like that's important enough that I want to have full council here present. I can go one way or the other as far as hearing the other agenda items, but I do feel like all of the agenda items this evening are ones that tend to generate a lot of conversations. So if other members are in support, I'd be okay to not move forward with the meeting.
Member Nunekamp.
We do have precedent for doing a study session when we only have 4 members present. So if there are some things that make sense for us to review tonight, I'm happy to do that. And if there are some agenda items that we feel like we need to wait for a full council, I'm happy to do that as well. The input I would really like from staff is I don't want to delay a conversation on something, which means then we end up delaying a vote. We're coming up on the end of the year. I just want to make sure we're not going to log jam anything. But obviously, it's always preferable to have a full council.
City Manager Lewis, you have any opinions from staff on which of these items are more urgent, which can be delayed?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson. So the 2 items that we have at the beginning related to homelessness, the second one would be good to do this evening. It's a really quick study session just to ensure that council is still on board with the draft as proposed. But the first item is that IGA, that's an action item that was moved from last week. And my understanding is it needs 2 readings to be able to be approved, and we needed it approved by the end of December to be able to utilize the funds.
Okay, so we'll have to bump that one to the next meeting and then possibly have a special meeting. But in terms of the Tri-Cities Homelessness Action Plan is the one that would be important to go forward with tonight in terms of discussion?
It would be if possible, if council's okay with only 4 members weighing in. But we do want to be able to finalize the draft with the other 2 cities.
Member Ward?
Do we know what's going on as far as the lack of quorum is concerned?
We don't. Member Russell called in sick, and the mayor is on vacation this week, and we don't have any new information from Member Wright, though she was feeling a little under the weather last week.
I'm wondering if we can have staff contact Member Wright. I'll draw your attention to 1-5-2-4 of the Englewood Municipal Code. 5 members of the City Council shall constitute a quorum at any regular or special meeting thereof. In the absence of a quorum, the presiding officer shall, at the insistence of any 3 members present, compel the attendance of absent members.
This is a special meeting, so we are required to have a quorum. City Attorney, can we even have this meeting? Normally with the study session, we would continue forward, but since this is a special meeting, does that section of code mean we shouldn't continue forward unless we compel the attendance of another member?
When we lack a quorum, that means we can't take any action on a business item. So technically, we can't convene a special meeting to take action unless and until we do have a quorum. We still can't have the study session items because that's simply a presentation of information, but we couldn't take any action on the IGA. It requires an ordinance adoption.
Okay, so if we continue forward, we just do it as a study session. Member Ward, does that answer your question, or would you like to request?
I'm fine with that. I would appreciate it if someone from staff could reach out to Member Wright and find out what exactly is going on. I'm not saying that there isn't some sort of emergency occurring. I'm not throwing any accusations. She's the only one that we haven't heard from. I'll just go on record saying I skipped last week. I needed a personal day, and so I took one. But at the time that I did that, I knew that my decision to skip would not deny this body a quorum. So that's why I felt comfortable doing it.
Right. Well, I tried to call Member Wright. I think the city manager texted her as well, so we haven't heard back from her. Hearing nothing, I think we move forward with the items we can do tonight. And
Mayor, to your earlier question, Mayor Pro Tem, to your earlier question, the Community Development Director did just let me know that the state law issues, none of those can wait until after the first of the
Okay.
year if we need to.
okay, well, I propose tonight then that we move forward with item 5, the Tri-Cities Homelessness Action Plan, and just move everything else forward to a future meeting. Does that sound good to council? Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 5, the Tri-Cities Homelessness Action Plan. Deputy City Manager Tim Dodd.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson. So as you'll recall, in late November, I think it was November 21st, you had your annual Tri-Cities joint council meeting with the city councils of Littleton and Sheridan. And at that meeting, you discussed adding 2 more years to the Tri-Cities Homelessness Action Plan, as well as the projects and performance metrics that will go in there. And so what I wanted to do with you tonight is just review it one more time, just to make sure you're all on board with the changes. Of course, if you do have any additional changes, we would need to run those by the other 2 cities. But we do want to have the plan of action up for adoption as early as we can in January so that we can obviously start moving forward with it. So I won't spend a ton of time. I do have several slides in your packet that are up here. So if there are questions, I'm happy to go through in greater detail. Just as a reminder, there are 16 now proposed projects. Member Ward and Member Newnenkamp both proposed additional projects which have been added and have been okayed by the other 2 cities. We recommended, as a reminder, the sunsetting of the workforce development theme, but keeping the additional other 3 themes. The reason for that is we feel most of the major projects have been completed. That being said, we also want to switch to more of a monitoring phase and also keep performance metrics in there for the 2 big workforce development projects. We estimate the total to be about 160 for these projects. As a reminder, though, if the IGA does need to be passed by the end of the year for us to be able to encumber the ARPA funds that have already been appropriated by this body. As I mentioned, in addition to projects, it does include performance metrics for each of the 4 themes. And I'll go through this really quickly. But the governance theme, 80% of the projects in this theme have been completed. This would really be a focus on the future. It would be a focus on a financial sustainability model, a governance sustainability model, as well as a few other additions. So one that Member Ward brought up was the determination of the feasibility of how opioid settlement funds could be used for these efforts. The hosted fund was talked about a bit at the last meeting on November 21st, and that relates to having basically a philanthropic arm or body that would allow us through a hosted fund structure to raise funds to help with the sustainability of this project. The single adult system, these are primarily existing projects. We did get some news today about safe parking, or we may have to pivot just with the main organization doesn't plan on being around on January 1st, so we may have to figure our Tri-Cities coordinator is figuring out some other options for this, but we do want to continue if council's okay with exploring it. These other 2, the online platform and the healthcare engagement, are already in the works. Some of the other items are related to housing, so promoting shared housing, strengthening outreach to landlords. Obviously, as I think you're aware, the permanent supportive housing study is probably the signature item of this plan. And then finally, the Member Newnenkamp suggested addition, the exploration and determination of the feasibility of coordinating affordable housing studies and initiatives across the city, across the 3 cities, I should say, the region. And then finally, family system. All of these projects are existing. As a reminder, of the 4 areas, this is the one where the least work was done, just because the decision was made to focus first on the chronic or individual system, and then to focus on the family system thereafter. So these are all existing projects that we would just carry over. And then as a reminder, we are also proposing that we add performance metrics for each of the 4 areas. Many of these or all of these are drawn from other sources. In this case, the Metro Denver Homelessness Initiative, as well as our contracts with the 2 workforce development sites. And then some of the navigation center, these are in the contract. They're required to report to us on these. These are the workforce development ones. And then finally, the family system, these are required reporting tools through the McKinney-Vento Liaison, which is, as you're probably aware, a federal program. And that's the presentation. So again, the ask is just for council to tell us if you're okay with the plan as is, or if you want to see any other edits before we finalize it with communications and bring it to the 3 councils.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Dodd. I'll open it up for questions. Member Nunekamp.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for the presentation and the refresher after our recent joint meeting. And I appreciate the addition of this concept of housing and how do we work on the preventative side of this and explore some of the research. I see also in the plan that we still have the planned permanent supportive housing piece of this. Do you see an opportunity for any of that to be connected, or do you see that as 2 completely separate workflows?
Absolutely. So I think the reason, absolutely, I can see them connected. I think the reason why I kept them separate was the permanent supportive housing was already a plan in was already an action item in the original plan. And so I wanted to keep it kind of the way it was framed. But I hope, by the nature of the fact that it's in a regional plan, is that the permanent supportive housing study would be done on a regional basis. And I hope if done well, it would then allow for a platform effectively to work into the second or the other action step that you proposed that would allow us to figure out how we can coordinate on other aspects of affordable housing.
That's really helpful. Obviously, I raised the idea, but I wanted to check with staff to ensure that it didn't feel duplicative or, at worst, counterproductive to kind of have 2 separate housing pieces. But I do think that they're both valuable, so I appreciate that.
Other questions? Member Bryan.
Thank you. Just a few quick questions, and I apologize, I was not able to attend the last joint meeting, so this may have been discussed there. But first off, can you just talk to me a little bit about why it costs around $50,000, or that's what we're targeting, to identify a lead service provider?
So I can do my best, and my answer is probably not a great one, but my answer was that's so when we originally built the action plan and we hired a professional to build it, that was the number that she came up with. So it's a number that's been in the plan now for 3 years. I can't speak to the kind of specific work that she did to come up with that number. I can just say that she did put research in developing those numbers. My guess is that it would probably be that there would be some kind of contract with that lead service provider to provide services similar to the model that we're doing for the individual family system, which is, so Move-In 5280 basically won the contract or the RFP process to create the navigation center for individuals or chronic. Bridge House, sorry. Bridge House won that. And so it would be a similar type of arrangement where we would probably do an RFP and find someone, and then we would require them to provide specific services.
Okay. And it sounds like they'd act a little bit like a care coordinator type of role to kind of connect the person in need to the various resources that we now have available.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. When we did research, we found that there wasn't one model of a navigation center. There are many. There are some where direct services are provided at the navigation center, and then there are others where it's all about connection. The model that Bridge House is doing here for individuals is more about the connection part, although there will be limited beds there that would be available while people are kind of going through intake and they're trying to figure out what the interventions are that would work best for them.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. This one I think will be shorter and quicker. Do we have the necessary data sharing agreements in place with the school districts to be able to accomplish the performance goals, if you will, for the family supports?
That's a great question. So I don't know definitively, but my answer is I believe yes, because we have been collecting the McKinney-Vento data for the last 3 years. So I hope that we have the required mechanism to do so.
Okay. And then lastly, this is kind of more of a long-term thought that I have. So I see that we're really looking at unduplicated numbers, et cetera, in some of our metrics that we're tracking. Do you envision a time where ultimately we could be able to look at duplicated clients? So clients that are kind of, coming back into services as a data point to be able to examine like what we have in place and the structure of our systems and whether it's working or not, or do we have people that, need to kind of keep coming back in so that we can fine tune how we're doing things as we go long term?
I absolutely do think so. I think it will become more of a possibility once the Navigation Center launches for individuals this spring. And once we're able to collect more data from more individuals coming through the door for that program. So I definitely hope that's and I think it is a possibility probably a year or so in, which would be in 2026.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Member Ward.
I wanted to talk briefly about the safe parking project. I know that we discussed this briefly during the joint session. As I understand it, we haven't identified any safe parking locations that we're willing to talk about at this point. Is that correct?
I think we're exploring some, but yes, there hasn't been kind of a final determination of locations that we could bring to you. That's correct.
I think of all the elements in the plan, this is one of the ones that has the most potential to be controversial in the community. And I'll just point out that Englewood is currently hosting Bridge House and a number of other homeless service providers. I think the tolerance of many of my constituents might be stretched if we attempted to add safe parking to our city. So I would urge some caution there. As far as, in particular, education on what the plan is. What I heard at the joint session indicated that safe parking is just that. It's safe, it's organized, it's well-planned, but I think there would still be some reaction depending on what locations we chose for this project.
Absolutely, and of course, we're very cognizant of the fact that location really is everything when it comes to this, and that's why, we have 3 cities and we're looking actively at different opportunities. As I mentioned somewhat cryptically at the beginning of tonight, we were told today that Colorado Safe Parking Initiative that we have been working with, exploring opportunities with, will likely not be in a position to help us with this starting on January 1st. So our management fellows on top of it, working with our Tri-Cities coordinator to figure out other nonprofit organizations that have experience doing this that we could potentially partner with. So I should have been more explicit. Sorry about that. That's what I meant. But yes, absolutely. We're very aware that the location of where we would land on this is sensitive regardless of how safe the program is. And we would absolutely want it to be safe when it was launched.
And related to that, if we're not spending the $25,000 with Colorado Safe Parking Initiative, where is that $25,000 planned to go at this time?
So if the 3 councils approve the plan as written, my understanding is that Colorado Safe Parking Initiative as a nonprofit is not explicitly mentioned in the plan. It's just to develop the concept of a pilot safe parking. So if we got the direction from the 3 councils by approving this plan, it would mean that we would go out basically to the market and see what other organizations exist that we could partner with to meet that action item.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And Councilmember Ward, if I could add to Deputy City Manager's point, we've been pretty explicit with the other 2 cities that because of the number of facilities that have landed in Englewood, that we strongly encourage that safe parking lands in Littleton or Sheridan. There were 3 sites that were explored in Littleton. I think the first has been ruled out, but they're still looking at 2. Sheridan also has a site that's kind of a backup, so we think we're in good shape with that. But as Deputy City Manager Dodd said, we would probably be partnering with a different nonprofit partner.
And related to that information, would we have any say as a city on whether or not that comes here? If Tri-Cities says, well, the best location we found in Englewood, or the best location we found in the region is in Englewood, what if anything, could we do to affect that decision?
I think we would I think regardless of what city it landed in, I think we should be going to that city's council and basically ensuring they're okay with it. Of course, if the Tri-Cities board makes the recommendation that they want to do it in Sheridan, Littleton, or Englewood, that they would be able to back up that recommendation. But I think it would make sense to go to that council for their buy-in.
Thank you.
And as the Tri-Cities representative for our council, I'll be sure to bring that back to our council before before we decide to move forward with that or something, as all of the decisions do ultimately come before all the councils. Deputy City Manager, I wanted to ask about the hosted fund. Can you explain a little bit more about how that works as a funding mechanism, what money it opens us up to, and those kind of things?
Yeah, so I can speak, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson, about my personal experience of doing one in a different state. But essentially, the term hosted means that it's hosted by, usually or always, by a nonprofit that does this for other funds. And typically the way it works is the reason you would want to do that is there's less of a liability, there's less of a fiduciary responsibility on the individual city or cities to do it. Not to say we couldn't do it that way, but it would require working very closely with our finance department and setting that up. But with a hosted fund, you essentially sign a contract with the nonprofit. Then the nonprofit usually has boilerplate contracts that have all kinds of stipulations around how decisions are made about how the funds are used. The positive to it typically, again, besides being less of a liability on the city and less of a responsibility, it also just makes it so that you're following kind of a standard process that nonprofit already has. Typically, though, the city and others can still go out and encourage people to donate to it. And then typically in the contracts, the hosted fund holder is required to report back to the city. I've seen dashboards that are almost instantaneous or very close to that. So they're typically required to tell us, where the funds are coming from, what the funds, the amount of the funds that are in there, whether they've gained interest. And then typically there is a fee. I think the standard is about 3%, but that may have changed in the last few years.
And would the cities then donate money to that or allocate money to the fund?
They could, but it would actually be more. I think the idea was that it would be identifying homelessness as an issue that really we all could go all in on. So individuals, nonprofit organizations, businesses. So the idea would be really, it wouldn't be our only, hopefully, it wouldn't be our only source of funding. But as you know, we've been using primarily ARPA funds to fund this up to this point, which is going away. And so we realized we need to be more creative about funding it in other ways. And so this would be a way of someone saying, hey, I want to help with this effort. I can give $50. A group of school children doing a fundraiser and donate $1,000. That's really what it would be about.
And then the money in the fund, if it was going to be utilized for something the city planned, would that nonprofit then pay the money back to the city, or would the programs be operated out of that nonprofit?
That's a good question, and I think it borders on being a legal question. So typically the hosted fund, though, doesn't operate programs, so it would have to go somewhere. I don't know if they could donate it back to the city or if there would have to be some other nonprofit mechanism that would have to be the entity, or the county that would have to be the entity that would manage it. That would also be a part of the governance feasibility work that we want to do.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions on this item from council? All right, I don't see any others. Now, we discussed delaying the housing law, state housing laws and the comprehensive plan. The capital projects review, that also strikes me as something we may want a full council for as well, but I do see staff still here potentially for that one as well. But council's will to delay that one also? Member Dunekamp?
Yeah, I would like to hear from staff about the timeliness, if they need any direction from council tonight, or if this is something that we could delay for the entire council.
Yeah, City Manager Lewis, is this time sensitive at all?
No, it is not.
Okay.
I do have one announcement that I need to make with my apologies to council. At the top of the morning this morning, Member Wright did in fact email me and the mayor to let us know that she was not feeling well. On Friday, she had virtually no voice, and you may remember she was quite raspy that Monday before. So my apologies that I missed that email, and I did get Member Russell's email at 5:30, and so I apologize for missing Member Wright's email.
Thank you for that information. All right, with that, we'll move on to council, just close out with council members' choice if anybody has anything to share this evening. Seeing none, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I mentioned in my council one-on-ones that I would be asking you all tonight if you'd be interested in having the annual meeting that we've historically had the last few years with our state representatives, with our federal representative, and with our county colleagues at the Commissioners Court. And you all may want to postpone that decision as well until we have a full council. But is that the will of council to just delay that also?
That'd be my opinion.
Okay. Well, then no further
All right.
report. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.